time for Frozen. I can't believe it. It feels like a long road getting to Frozen. When we found out that we were going to be able to do it, it was so exciting. When Disney called and said, guess what? Frozen is going to be available. Would you like to do it in the fall of 2024? And we were like, no. Could we do it in the summer of 2024? And he said, let me check. And they checked and they said, absolutely. And so we get to do it. And it's going to open very soon.
It's pretty exciting. I always get really excited about these big Disney shows. And one of my favorite things to see, well, I mean, of course, like nothing can beat the little princesses that we'll have in the lobby. Like we definitely want all the Anna and Elsa dressed up children. But one of the things I noticed with Beauty and the Beast is we would have people coming up to us without little children. And they were like, man, best thing I've seen, right? Like, so if you're one of those adults that thinks you don't like Disney shows, you're wrong. You will love this show. And I think even just seeing like the plans of the set, which we're building, which local designer Michael Downs, local but world-renowned designer Michael Downs has created, and then our whole team is starting to build. That set is going to be incredible.
It really is
beautiful.
It has lots of tricks and bells and whistles that you don't even, just looking at it, it's gorgeous. But then it does a lot of things that you're like, whoa, it'll be so surprising. And, you know, beautiful projections too that are going to be done by a Chicago projectionist named Michael Commendatore, who's worked for us before. And it is very exciting. And the show is, if you know the movie, the cartoon, it follows that, obviously that's the story, but the writers wrote really some really beautiful, more mature and really in-depth emotional songs for both Anna and Elsa. Well, all the characters. Kristoff has a lullaby, and Hans has some songs that you really do fall in love with all of these characters and feel for them. Like Elsa, you feel like the isolation that she really feels. And I think in that way, it does make it more of an adult show. I mean, it's definitely for kids, but the adults, I think, can also take a lot from it. It was done in New York and it was on Broadway, and it went through a kind of a hard road getting to the show in New York. I think they went through 4 different directors before the show opened, and so the voice of the show in New York was a little disjointed, I think, and so we're going to do what we can to bring it back to closer to what it was for the movie, and the cast that we have coming in. Is really Elsa's a great actress, and the voice is fantastic. Her name is Kennedy Coggle, and then Anna is Aubrey Madelon, and she's funny and cute as can be, and it's going to be a really great show, and the costumes are gorgeous and lavish and beautiful, and we have an Olaf and a Sven. Sven is the reindeer, and Olaf is the snowman, and they're puppets, and they're being made by a puppet company in Kansas City, and they're so much fun to work with. I went up there and did a little prototype playing, and it was really fun. So we should get those. They're going to be finished soon, so we'll get them down here to play, and it's going to be a really great show. And we also have lots of little kids who are going to be in the show. We have a camp of kids who are learning to be some of the little trolls, and also the little Huga, the people in the sauna. So that's exciting too. It's going to be a really fun family adventure show, but it does have really a lot of heart, and especially if you're a sibling and you have any of the like a sister, like if you're 2 sisters specifically, it's really about the bond between the 2 of them. And you know, there's a secret that Elsa has that she can't tell Anna, and watching that struggle play out as well. It really is a beautiful show.
Yeah, it's just like a lot of like classic family dynamic stuff. It's very relatable. So when Disney calls and says you can have this show, they're also like, but it can't look like Broadway. It can't look like the tour. It can't look like the movie. Mm-hmm. And there are also these like, we need it to look like Frozen,
all of
right?
Those
so
things.
Like talk a little bit about navigating that process.
Yeah, so that's so true, because everyone wants the show that I made this joke at auditions that we were doing this new version. I tell the kids that we saw over 930 people for these roles that are for this summer. And every time they would sit down and I would tell them about each show, and I would say, we're doing this new version of Frozen, and we're all going to be dolphins and seahorses, and they look at me like, what? I'm like, I'm just joking. But Disney it is like that. Like you can't do the show like they did it in New York, but it has to look so much like people like people know of the cartoon specifically. So you have to find someone who can take that and make a whole new world, but still land and make the show that has been written for the set that was in New York or the TV show, and make it work on our set. So it's like kind of like having to like go into the script and look and say like, how can I make this work? And it almost works better if you have no concept of what they've done before, and you just have to make your own world out of it. And Michael Downs has done a really great job of doing this, of making this set that is a unit set that can transform into all of these different locations, and with little wagons that come in with like a bed on it or a door or totem poles that are in the woods, and part of it is snowy and part of it's really, really green and lush. And so, but you have to have someone with so many ideas and so imaginative, and that is that guy. I mean, I can't even imagine what goes on in his brain or if it ever stops, but he has so many great ideas, and now he's gotten them down on paper, and now they have to build them. and I need him honestly to help me, to walk me through like, how does it all work? And it's kind of the same thing with costumes. Like Elsa has a specific costume that she wears, and Anna too. And so you have to take that, and you either by finding different kinds of fabrics, or the silhouette is the same, but it looks and it harkens to, but it's not exactly like. And that's really all I think they want, is that you have your own stamp on it, but it all has to be approved. And so we had to get it all done months ago so that we could build it. So you have to get it designed and then send it off to Disney World, not really, but Disney theatricals. And they look through it and they give you yay or nay. And there was one thing that they wanted us to change, and we changed it, and then they were fine. And so, but it is definitely a process. And so we're still waiting on a script and a score for them, because they wanted to redo some of that stuff in the show. And so we're waiting for the official script and score so that we can really get to work on it.
I am definitely, like, I'm from a Disney family. Like, we are a Disney family.
Yeah.
We love Disney World. And I know you are a Disney family, too. And you also have been employed by Mickey.
I sure have, yeah.
And I think that one of the things that is so amazing about being on one of those Disney properties is that you really understand, like, the impact of the quality control.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, the quality control is so deep, where like there's really rigorous training. There's like, this is how things exist in our world. Yeah. And so I think one of the things that the other arms, like Disney theatricals, they're always trying to walk this line of, we control this intellectual property, and this is our brand that's out there. And also, we don't want just cut and paste when it happens other places. And so that, to me, like, it's always really interesting to watch that process. But we're really careful. Like, there tend to be more rules. Like, there are rules about, how you market things and how you present things. And we try to be like really careful to follow all those rules, because you do not want to get in trouble with the mouse. That's what you learn. I lived in Florida for a few years, and you do not want to get in trouble with the mouse. So, so we're definitely, I think we're doing really well on that, but it's going to be a pretty exciting show.
Yeah, it is true. I worked at Disney World in Florida, and then I worked at Tokyo Disneyland in Japan. And it was both of them the happiest place on earth. But both of them, you had to go through something called traditions at Disney World, and where you take these classes where you learn all about the Disney company, and you learn all the names of the 7 dwarfs and all of the things, and take a test and make sure that you know it, because you're an ambassador of their brand. And, even both of us during the pandemic went out on Disney vacations. We went on a cruise, and I think you went to Disney World, and we both came back and were like, wow, that is something to come back and take about the patron experience. When you go to Disney World, everything is thought about, and it does make you as a patron think like, oh, they do really care, and there's not one thing that's been forgotten. And so, in our world, I was like, we have to do that too, like make sure that everyone who comes into our world feels like they are the most important person. And so, come see our show and feel like the most important person in town.
Like, I think for the people that really love to do a little research before they come, there is an absolutely incredible documentary on Disney Plus, and it is called Into the Unknown, and it's the making of Frozen 2. And it follows the directors of the film, and you see like all of the animators that work on it. It's like 6 episodes, so it's about like a 5 or 6 hour investment, but worth every minute, because like the 2 directors, like the Jennifer Lee, who was one of the directors of Frozen 1 and 2, and also did Wish and several other things. She's now like the creative director of the film part of like Disney animation. And you just see like in their daily lives, like how much they sacrifice and how hard they all work and how they steer this story where you have all of these different creatives, because you've got like the animators, you have the songwriters, you have the artists, you have like all of these different people, and how they're just trying to push them all to this one really specific place. And there's a lot of like how like they really wrestle with a couple of key songs into the second movie, which also has really fantastic songs in it. And just to sort of see that struggle of like, oh, okay, so like if you're a songwriter and you work so hard on this song, you get kind of attached to it. Yeah. And then the director's like, it's got to go. Like we're not, and just like seeing that back and forth and how people really have to like submit their ego to the greater good. And I mean, these songwriters are really fantastic. They've had a ton of success. So it's not like, oh, this one song not working. They just kept moving. But it's so amazing to watch that whole process. So I'd highly recommend watching that one. If you get 6 hours, Brian, between that one.
That's fascinating. I mean, it's the same way as putting a stage show together. It's like the same thing. Like you have to sacrifice these. Like I worked so hard on this song for weeks and weeks and weeks, and they're like, but it just doesn't fulfill the story or help move the plot forward or whatever. And they're like, get out of there. So that's interesting. It's funny because in the Broadway show of Frozen, they reference only once Frozen 2 in that Elsa wears pants. There's a song in Act 2 called Monster, and for whatever reason on the Broadway and the tour, Elsa changes in her ice palace. She has whipped up a smart little pantsuit.
She was sewing.
But in Frozen 2, she has pants. But in Frozen 1, she doesn't. So she won't be wearing pants in Wichita. She'll just stay in her dress. But I thought it was fascinating that you're like, because I was like, well, I wonder why they do that. And I'm like, oh yeah, she does have the pants on in Frozen 2, but she won't here. We're so fortunate to have such a great relationship with Disney Theatricals over the years. Wayne Bryan, who was my predecessor, really like forged that and like cultivated that. And so because we are able to build sets and costumes here in town on a scale that is a Broadway scale, and then also be able to rent those out to other theaters around the country, Disney, I think, reached out to us and said, we have these properties that are now like Beauty and the Beast was the first show that they ever did on Broadway. And then they did The Little Mermaid and Mary Poppins and Newsies and Freaky Friday and, this Frozen show. And so they always reach out to us first because we can help them make money, because we can do it. They can send it to us, give it to us, and then we can create the sets and costumes and then send it around the country so people can rent it. And then with every rental, they make money and their show gets done over and over again, because making these sets is really expensive and these costumes. So if you can find them, are already done, then, and we do, and they really do appreciate the level of work and creativity and craftsmanship and that we can provide here. So that's, I think, one of the main reasons why they give us the licenses.
Yeah, our location helps too. Yeah. Like there are times where being in the middle of the country like creates extra challenges, and there are times when it is really beneficial. Yeah. And this is one of those times, because you can't, like, Disney is very careful about competing with themselves. And so if you're a theater that's really close to where you can go see a Broadway show, there's a little bit less interest in saying like, oh, well, if Aladdin's open on Broadway, like, we're not going to let you have it, 90 miles away. Right. We want people to come to New York. You can't mean, you could, but it is hard to get in the car and drive to New York, Disney World, Disneyland. Like we're a flight away from everything in most cases too, though I know we're working on that. So I think that really helps too, because we have a population of people in Kansas that are going to see these shows because Music Theater Wichita is producing it. And one thing that I think Disney is so smart about is that like seeing shows, watching the films, seeing the shows, all of that makes you want to have more Disney, not less Disney, right? So there is this real like long look at like how do we look at a family over multiple years and multiple generations, and we want them to come here for all these magical moments over decades rather than just kind of a one and done. And I think they're really smart about that. Yeah, it's fascinating when you say that, because I think like, oh yeah, when I worked at Tokyo Disneyland, it was like my show was all about the new Disney. There had been a show called One Man's Dream that was Mickey and Donald and Goofy and all those like original characters, but we were the new Disney World, which was Ariel and Pocahontas and Belle and that era. But now it's a whole new era. Now it's like Pixar.
Right. We need new Disney. Right. So yeah, it is fascinating because it is, that was my childhood, but now my children are growing up on those shows and these new things, which is fascinating. It really is a great business model.